everybody.
Go.
Thank you for tuning in and welcome to episode 1 of DXP Decoded, which is a brand new podcast series put out by Altudo that makes enterprise digital experience platforms actually make sense. My name is Matt Vandermelon. I'm the Global VP of Digital Experience here, and I've been in the digital experience space for the better part of 20 years now, working with platforms like Sitecore, which we're going to be covering a lot of, to really help organizations get the most out of their investment in their Martech stack. And I'm joined with my colleague, Jennifer.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Stoll. I am VP of Digital Strategy at Altudo, and I'm excited to talk more about DXP, not just the technology, but also why is it relevant? Why are we having conversations about digital platforms with every client that we speak to, and how do we bring strategy to life through DXP?
Awesome. So every episode, we're going to break down some facet of the platform, kind of some of the decisions that go into choosing platforms and real-world trade-offs you make as you're implementing from both a marketing, strategy, and technology standpoint. We're going to start at the beginning today. We're going to make this super remedial. So for some of you that are really keen to dig in on some of the more advanced topics around a DXP, we will get to that. But today is all about laying a foundation. So let's get into it.
Great. Yeah, I just think that this is a fun way to start our conversation. And if you are a marketing, digital, or a business leader trying to make sense of everything from CMS to DXPs to personalization to AI, this conversation is really going to be a great way to lay a foundation for what we're going to be talking about in the future. So, Matt, I think as our resident expert, I'd like to kick this off and just ask you a few questions. And the first one might sound a little basic, but I think it's important to ground ourselves in what we're talking about and why. So, can you just give us an overview of what is a digital experience platform?
Absolutely, and it's a great question, and I think my answer to this question would likely have changed depending on what year in my career you asked me this. But in 2026, a digital experience platform is typically a composable platform that will allow you to speak to your clients across multiple channels, and really a place for you to manage all of your content, your branding, your tone of voice, how you go to market with them. It allows you to do things like personalization, A/B tests. That usually has some sort of advanced search capabilities and a lot more. These platforms have evolved quite a bit over the time. I remember when I first started my career, people were basically just using Dreamweaver as a digital experience platform, and success was getting a page live without the need for developer intervention. Now it's evolved into being able to give as close to a one-to-one experience to your users as is possible and be as contextual and in time as you possibly can.
That is a very great and succinct response. So, I think a great way to frame it, just listening, if I was a CMO, what I would hear is this isn't about managing pages, but it's about managing customer experiences across channels. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the platforms have really evolved from a place where the only channel that they were really driving experiences on, or even able to drive experiences on, are the web. But now you're talking about web, mobile, email, social, and even in-store experiences. We've leveraged platforms like Sitecore to manage digital signage in stores, to manage billboards, to manage bus shelters, anything you can really, anything with a digital screen on it really can be managed through a digital experience platform these days.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I guess my next follow-up would be, and you did mention you've been around for a while and you've seen a lot evolve within this industry.
Mhm.
How is a DXP different than a traditional CMS?
Yeah, and I think this is where the evolution becomes very, very important. A CMS is really CMS is one function of a full-on DXP. So when I mention some of the advanced marketing features, and we'll take personalization being a big one, and one that I'm particularly passionate about. A typical CMS may be able to handle a couple of different variations, but they won't be able to handle personalization and being able to personalize based on information you're going to find in any number of systems. When you think about something like connecting a CRM into the core content management system, into an email campaign management platform, and really having that 360-degree view of the customer, that's where a DXP will shine. If you just want to get content out and maybe do some very, very light personalization, that's what a CMS is for. And when I look at the platform landscape these days, when you talk about full DXP, you got your players like Optimizely, Content Stack, Sitecore, and Adobe. And then on the CMS side, the lighter weight side, there's Builder.io, there's Contentful, and a whole bunch more in that kind of lower tier space.
Nice. Yeah, I love that you really focused on personalization. I know it's one of the key differences, but I think just, as a strategy leader, I always come at every situation from what are our target audiences looking for? What do they need? And I evaluate experiences through their lens, whether I am a chief legal counsel looking for a company who can help me, a law firm that can help me, or whether I'm a consumer that's shopping for tile somewhere. So personalization is just more and more important every single day as we see these expectations rise, and we all, as just consumers in our own lives, have those same expectations. So um, I love that you led with that because it is so critical right now to experiences.
Totally, and I think it's also, and I mean, we're probably going to do an entire episode at some point on just personalization. It's one of those topics I could talk about all day, but I think the really exciting time to be in our space right now is with the advancements of AI. You talked about you mentioned a number of different kind of personas and journeys and different people you want to be targeting. Um, the biggest challenge for enterprises to do that at scale has always been, if you think about it, if you're looking to personalize to 3 to 4 different personas across 40 different countries and you're a house of 50 different brands, the content creation exercise to personalize just one page across all those different options would require an army of people. AI has fundamentally closed that gap, and that was always the biggest challenge to deploying personalization at scale. And you look at some of these, like Sitecore does a really good job of this with their content recommendation engine, and they're coming out with a new feature called Affinities, which kind of automatically interprets the next best action based on what someone's already done on your site. So you're no longer, it takes the guesswork out of it, which is really, really cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, more data, less guesswork, just naturally leads to better outcomes.
Absolutely. It also frees up the content teams, right? Like if you think about it, you don't want to be your smart people shouldn't be just creating content variants all day. They should be working on the strategy and letting AI handle some of the more mundane tasks like that.
Absolutely. Let technology do some of that heavy lifting so you can use your human brain.
Yep.
So, when would an organization realize they need a DXP? What's that trigger point that you found that it's, we need to move beyond our traditional CMS and start exploring DXPs?
That's a fantastic question, and I think it's great because I see enterprise companies, and this is no shade to the product, but I see enterprise companies with huge ambitions still deployed on WordPress. And then I've also seen on the other side of things, companies that are just struggling to get basic pages out the door on some behemoth like AEM. So it is a great question. I think, and this is probably simplifying it a little bit, but when you think about that classic digital maturity scale, you had crawl, walk, run, and what I've been telling everyone is like now that we have with the advent of AI, we also have fly in there as well. I think if you're crawling is a great place to really get good at everything a CMS can do. But if you want to start walking, and that is some of the more advanced personalizations, integrating with other systems, really trying to drive persona-based personalization, journey-based personalization, that kind of stuff. Even advanced search features. Search is another area that I'm sure we'll cover in a lot more detail. But some of the more semantic search features, those are typically available more available in a DXP. And then from a content management perspective, the content is one piece, but the assets that go with the content are another piece. So if you hit a certain breaking point where you find your teams are spending a lot of time trying to search for content, search for assets, and you kind of need something like a digital asset management system, that's probably a good indication that you also need a DXP to go with that.
Awesome. So I guess my next follow-up question from
Hmm.
this would be, if you are listening and you're thinking, are we crawling? Are we walking? Are there signals that would tell you you've outgrown traditional CMS, or is that unique to every organization?
In some ways, it's going to be unique to every organization. And one of the things that we do here at Altudo is something that I'm with a lot of our clients is something called the measurement framework. And it's basically trying to establish from a digital perspective what all of your KPIs should be, and they will ladder back up to business objectives, organizational objectives. Um, you should be able to, from a digital perspective, understand exactly how all of your initiatives are going to impact your business goals. Um, and if your current platform can't do that stuff, it's probably a good time to start looking for something else.
Yeah, that's great. Tying it back to the business objectives and strategically what the organization is trying to accomplish will really keep it focused. And I think it's, as we've used our business value frameworks, it's really helpful as we're having more of those executive level conversations and being able to show not just the rationale for why systems are needed and why you need to reevaluate, but also what are the decisions you have to make as you go through this fun journey that will impact things, immediately, and then what do you need to
Mhm.
push farther out? So it helps you make some of those tough calls on prioritization and really what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I mean a big part of that is also being able to measure what you're doing and making sure that you can understand when you make changes across any of your digital experiences, being able to measure the effect of those changes, whether positive or negative. If your systems can't do that, that's another great signal that it's probably time to reevaluate your Martech stack, reevaluate how it's implemented, everything else.
So, you said you were talking about AI a bit
Mhm.
earlier, and obviously that's top of everyone's mind. And you said specifically that AI closes the content scale gap. Does that mean that DXPs matter more now, or could AI make them less necessary in the future? How do you see AI and DXPs really like, do they work together to close that content scale gap?
That's $1 million question. I think there's the right now, and there's where I see things going. The reality is, I think the role of the DXP is going to change. I think it will evolve eventually from a place where you create content to a place where you orchestrate experience. The terminology I've been using internally is like the DXP will become an orchestration engine where and you see this, Sitecore's doing it, Optimize's doing it. Um, there's a huge push for partners, for clients to start building agents within their platforms to help manage this. I mean, we've all seen the amount of content that is now generated by AI. I find myself yearning for a personal touch around writing, and I think that you're going to see a renaissance of that to some degree. But I think you're going to see the DXP become a lot more important in terms of engineering experiences across all your digital channels. And I think it's going to become easier to do that. It's going to be way less about pushing content out, and it is really just about managing how people are interacting with your brands.
Love that. And you're talking about engineering experiences, which leads me to, I guess, my next natural question is
Mm-hmm.
when we're talking about large enterprise organizations, especially, or really any size organizations, but I find this to be a little more a little more complex when you get to the enterprise level. Who actually owns a DXP decision? And we think about engineering experiences, and quite often that's marketing, digital, but we're also talking about a platform, which is IT, product. So what does good ownership look like when we're talking about DXP, and who ultimately makes decisions on that and who owns that decision?
Yeah, and this is another thing that is drastically changed over the past decade, I would say. I think you've seen a lot more. I mean, I started to see about a decade ago the marketing organization get a lot more involved in the decisioning around digital experience platforms, and I think it directly tied to some of the capabilities that were coming out. They were a lot more marketer focused, but as we're seeing now, there's less bespoke development involved in these things. These projects used to take years to do for some large enterprises, and just with the ease of use on the tooling, the move to a more SaaS-based approach, and again, the advent of like AI can create some pretty decent code these days. The projects are a lot more focused on delivering business value than they are about like implementing a tool. So I think there's a much bigger shift to the marketing organization owning a lot of this stuff, and I think you're going to see that push further and further and further. And the platforms that are going to do really well will be able to speak to the experience of the marketer, not the experience of the developer anymore.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great. So we've covered a lot. I think that just if I was going to wrap this up and get people to tune in for our next conversation, my final question is, if someone listening walks away remembering just one thing about DXPs, what do you
Mhm.
think that should be right now?
Uh, excuse me. So, and I don't want this to sound like a threat at all. But if you have a DXP, you're looking at a DXP, you don't have a DXP, whatever it is, however you're reaching your end users, your clients, your customers, if you're not delivering a contextual experience, an experience that leaves them wanting more from your brand, an experience that speaks to them on their level, your competitors are. And it's not a matter of time, or sorry, it's not an if, it's a when your
Mm,
brand will become obsolete.
yeah,
Again, I don't want that to sound like a threat. It's just it's kind of the reality of what we're seeing.
absolutely. I'd expect nothing less from you than setting a good grounding in reality for us.
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so I think that's probably with that ominous note, I think it's probably a good place to kind of wrap for today. Thank you everyone for tuning in. As usual, I think we're going to try to put these out once every couple of weeks. The plan is for sometimes it's going to be Jen and I talking. Oftentimes we're going to bring in industry experts. We're going to bring in clients to talk about their experiences, and honestly, reach out to either one of us on LinkedIn if you have anything that you want us to cover.
Thanks again for the time. This was fun, Matt.
Yeah,
Looking
you
forward to
too.
the next one.
Talk soon.